We got Skallagrim hitting us with the Spooktober video. The best historical weapons for skeleton warriors. By, of course, Skallagrim.
Greetings, mortal.
There's a bit of an imbalance. I've talked before about which historical weapons in a fantasy setting would be best to fight skeletons with, and I've also talked about what will be the best weapons for a vampire.
Sure.
But I have not addressed what will be the best historical weapons for skeleton warriors. The question is whether you're willing to sacrifice style for efficiency. For a necromancer, of course, style matters, rightfully so. So if you wanted to be thematic about it, you could give them bone weapons. There's plenty to choose from in history, well, prehistory mainly.
No, just give them the femur. Just give each of them a really large femur. Proceed to mollywop tactic.
Of course, there are bone daggers, spearheads, or atlatl dart tips. Even an axe could have a head made of bone, shaped and sharpened, or an adze. That would, in my opinion, be the most effective. Either that or some version of war pick, basically, with a bone tip. Antler is generally more suited to that, but bone would still work, right? There's even bone armor in history. I've covered that before. I would find that a little bit pointless in this case, but stylish.
I mean, I would argue, so obviously the elephant in the room is, you know, they got them ribs, right? Like they're very much an example of like, you try to slash at them, right? It's going to go through them, right? Or potentially go through them. So crushing weapons would obviously be a better thing to do. Be able to crush, their femur, be able to crush their rib cage, be able to just absolutely just, warhammer their arm off, right? So that's definitely one of those things where that will be their weakness. That's why I think some kind of puncture / stabbing weapon would probably be pretty beneficial for them, or even like a pick, right? Because they can get in close and they could just mollywop, right? At that point, you're trying to do something to deflect crushing blows, right? So like if a crushing blow tries to hit it, it just ends up skittering off the armor because of its angle or something, right? I guess if you wanted to be efficient about it.
Often skeleton warriors are portrayed wielding sword and shield. The implication being that they simply use what they had in life, right, which is fair enough. A shield would be useful considering that the best way to damage a skeleton is by blunt impact, and a shield is useful to defend against that. But I don't think that's the most optimal choice. If you, as a discerning necromancer, wanted to equip your skeleton army as effectively as possible, I think there are better options. What's a strong advantage animated skeletons have over mere mortals? They're unstoppable, unhindered by the weakness of flesh. They don't need ATP to power their muscles. They can't tear muscles or ligaments or tendons or whatever. They just function. They just keep going. They don't get out of breath because they don't breathe. Now, how strong they are, I suppose, is a question of how strong the magic is animating them. But generally, I'd say they're not particularly weak or shouldn't be. And as I said, they don't need stamina. I could go with an axe or warhammer, but that's too mainstream. So disc mace it is. Here's a practical concern, if you will. When humans swing weapons around, they grip something, they've got fleshy, squishy bits that can conform to the object. They have structure in your skin that gives them a little more traction. When a skeleton holds something, it's just hard materials.
Right.
Just bone on wood. That does not make
peak content.
or a particularly firm grip. They would have to really claw into it, and maybe strongly enough to indent the wooden haft. So I think skeletons would find it easier to hold onto something like this, where they can put a bony finger over the guard.
I mean, honestly, yeah, I could see some sort of rapier or saber if I'm being completely honest, right? This also goes on to my prior point, right? My prior point of have some kind of stabbing weapon, right? Like it does depend on the magic system, right? The magic system here is going to be, it's going to be pretty relevant to the discussion at hand, right? Skeletons obviously not needing any sort of muscle function, not needing to breathe, right? They are very much an example of a force that just keeps going. Kind of a slow march, if you will, right? So you have something like the Inferi at the end of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, right? Not that they're more like kind of reanimated zombies rather than skeletons, right? But same concept, right? Where they just keep coming. You can Sectum Sempra, you can do a number of things, but you are not going to be able to really deal with them, right? And it depends, is this going to be something where like, is it like a Dark Soul skeleton, specifically in one where you have to use holy damage to finish it off, or he keeps resurrecting? Is this a example of brief magic, maybe like Diablo, where you just keep using bone swarms? Is this going to be an example where like, the magic is very strong and it actually augments the skeleton more than the sum of its parts, right? That's very situation and setting dependent. I think I like where he's going with this, rapier / saber, especially the basket to help kind of hold on to it. I think that this very much is the way to go if the magic system is strong enough and it augments their strength, right? Because what keeps the bones together, right? I would also say that augmenting skeletons into just having specific limbs would probably be more optimal, right? So what is the it's the Haradrim, from the corrupted Haradrim in the basement of Diablo 2 Act 2, right? Luke Golain, right? In the they have like blades for arms and stuff, right? Like, yeah, like if you, I don't know, whittled the skeleton's, forearm bones into, blades, right? I think maybe that would work a little better personally. But obviously that, I think, strays outside of what we're talking about today and talking about wielding weapons specifically. Any sort of finesse, I feel, is just not going to be there by nature of it being a skeleton. Think how long the wind-up in Dark Souls skeletons are, right? But it is dependent on the system.
Kind of hook in there, and that way it's not going to fly out of their hand. And
actually, bailing hooks. Bailing hooks and hooks in general, I feel, would go really hard.
There's also a fairly large pommel to keep it in place on the other side. I just don't find this particularly fitting, just thematically, for a skeleton. No. I mean, it could be an extra fancy skeleton. It could have an entire outfit built around this kind of sword.
Yeah, no, just have Baron von Skeleton, right? And he's just like, he's a higher ranking skeleton. And because the magic around him is much stronger, right? Much more potent, he's able to use, finesse weapons. He's able to use dex weapons. He's able to use the 4 guards of rapier to be able to try to deflect blows while thrusting, right? But that's not your rank and file skeleton.
That would also solve something else as well. I've talked about the importance of hand protection a lot, probably to the point where some of you are sick of it and think I'm overemphasizing it and whatnot. I do think that applies even to skeletons.
Yeah.
And you wrap your bony fingers around the handle, there's the same problem that living swordsmen have. This handle here becomes an anvil.
Skallagrim, if you watch this, what is your glove choice? Is that like, where did you buy them? I'm very curious on those because those look very form-fitting. I have my gauntlets, but I need to find a way to raise the knuckle plate because it's driving into my knuckles. Those I'm a huge fan of, actually. That would actually be a lot of hand protection for what I do.
So if an opponent's blade or other weapon hits the fingers, it's even worse than if the fingers were hit just floating freely, because now the finger bones are being crushed between the weapon and the grip of your own weapon, which makes it a lot worse. So, obviously, even though they are not constrained by the weakness of flesh,
they still wear and tear,
if
right?
their finger bones get crushed or chopped off or something, they still can't hold on to the weapon anymore. No. I guess at that point they can still stab the living with the bone shards that used to be their fingers, but anyway. So even for skelly warriors, I think it would make sense to wear gauntlets. Undersized ones, I suppose.
Sure.
But that would also have the advantage that there's something softer inside.
I feel like the clamshell works here, though. I can't. Let me see if I can get a good frame of it. Let me go back a little bit, because this would be a clamshell, right, or at least close to it, because it doesn't have the actual like digits, right? It's very much a curved plate and/or plates. So I'm trying to get a good shot of it. Yeah. So like these are just overlapping plates on top of each other. I wouldn't say this is specifically a clamshell, but I mean very much like, yeah, this is very much finger protection focused, right? I think that would make a lot of sense. But it also, yeah, well, depends on the magic system as well. I mean, what preservation magic stops the bones from breaking down, right? I'm assuming that there's something. And if not, right, if bones are still susceptible to breakage and stuff, he's absolutely on the money here personally.
Something softer inside, because every gauntlet has an inner glove made of leather. Yep. So that could actually help with the grip. You know what I think would be perfect for them? Of course you don't, that's why you're watching the video. A big-ass sword. Could also be a polearm.
Sure.
But the reasoning being...
Well, the funny thing about that is that you can use this Vihander like a polearm.
Said they're not constrained by endurance. They don't run out of breath. And if you have a long weapon that you can just keep swinging in large sweeping motions to create kind of a circle of death, how appropriate, they can just keep going. They can keep swinging that.
Yeah, they just turn into Dumai's Wells from Wheel of Time, right? Just vortex of just carnage around them.
And clear large areas and just do a lot of damage. And this still works pretty well for defense. You can still parry with that. And just the sheer advantage of the reach and power will make most attackers think twice, right? And if you don't run out of gas, that works pretty well. And also, the aforementioned potential issues with the grip, you've got a large pommel here, so that the skilly hand can slip off of that. You have a large guard here, particularly if you also have risers, like a fairly large riser in the middle, and maybe some at the ends. Plus,
I'm actually not a huge fan of this, the Keon style here. How they're top right, how they're inverse of each other. Because I have one of my swords. It's not rapier. It's too stout for rapier. It doesn't pass the weight test. How we've tested at SCA, right, is that you'll actually take like a fishing weight and hang it off the edge of the blade, and it has to bend X amount between X and Y. So it's a little too stout. It doesn't go for rapier play, but it's legal for cut and thrust, which is, you know, more like armored combat, a little higher, right? Where it doesn't need to bend as much. But it also has this Keon style. It throws my brain for a loop. I'm not a huge fan of it. The Messers are also a crossguard style that it's the one that juts out. I just have to get used to it. I have to use it more. Very much a fan of both the one underneath my model. Give me a second here. Very much a fan of symmetrical. I had to think about the word for a second. Symmetrical crossguards, symmetrical Keons, or like my longsword has, which is similar to what the Zweihander he has here. How there's the ring, so it's like 2 straight Keons and 2 rings, right? All perpendicular from each other. I'm actually a huge fan of the rings on longswords now. Very much grown on me.
Plus, the skeleton could put the hand here. That's not going to go anywhere. So this seems perfect to me. I don't see that as much. At least I don't remember a lot of games where you fight skeleton warriors with large two-handed swords. But that should totally be a thing. Why not? Yeah, I like that. You go, Bone Bro. Sure, usually polearm is almost always the right answer, but as I said, because of the bony fingers, it may not work as well. They might slip off and whatnot. Yeah, you can just say, no, they have a magically enhanced grip, whatever. Sure. Maybe you could extract some goo from gelatinous cubes and process it to make a glue that you use to literally adhere the weapons to the hands. But I like this idea. You know, again, it does give you a little bit more of a grip if you have fleshless hands. There's so much you can do with that. You can thrust with it. You can cut. You can, pommel strike. Unfortunately, I don't think skilly hands would be good for a murder stroke, because that would just fly right out.
At that point, you'd probably just give them a warhammer, or even then, like someone in chat mentioned, make a club or kind of hammer out of a spine and skull, right? I mean, you could even go Gomez from Gomez from Majora's Mask, how they had the Stalfos head on the scythe, right? Have like, a scythe that's made out of a magically reinforced spinal column, and then there's a head that protrudes into a scythe, whether it's metal or bone, right? I feel you could do this. I feel that'd be very viable. But I think hammers would also work as well. I'm applying the logic of I don't know who else has played Battle for Middle Earth 1. I don't know about 2. Lord of the Rings IP. How the Uruk-hai berserkers will kind of swing wildly around them if you watch some of their models and their moves. I'm applying that logic to a skeleton here. Honestly, I like it. I think that this is a really good thing to point out.
Which is a shame because they wouldn't be. Oh, hang on, that's good for zombies. Right? Because zombies wouldn't be concerned about cutting their hands or whatever. They can just grab that and just go to town. I'm liking this more and more. Something like this would be quite a good weapon against a skeleton generally.
This thing is disgusting. I definitely need to buy one at some point.
Just massive blunt impact force, right? That sword has a lot more reach, and it could still defend against it, either by powerfully striking into it and deflecting it, or by bracing it and blocking. For a more eccentric option, if you will, I could also imagine them dual-wielding patas, or sword gauntlets.
Yeah. Dual-wielding lantern shields. Yeah, no, I could see that. I could see this being cute.
Or perhaps hooded katars. That would work quite nicely, too. The entire hand is enclosed, and it cannot slip off. Even with
daggers,
skeleton hands, you could absolutely hold on to that, no problem. And fight like that. They can defend well, too, with a long blade and an armored hand and forearm. And it just would look really cool, don't you think? Let me know, what is equipment for skeleton warriors that you would particularly like and think would work well? Hope you liked this video. Happy Halloween, and take care, folks.
I know we're a little late on this one. I've definitely been a little lazy this Spooktober. Had a bunch happen. I think the fire did make sense. I actually really liked it. Part of me at the beginning was like, I think if it was turned down about 25%, if it was toned down a little bit, I think the bonfire noise was drowning him out a little bit. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought it made sense, because it's very much from the perspective of you're talking to him next to a bonfire. It's going to be pretty loud over a certain thing, right? Honestly, I enjoyed this though. This is great. It's been a while since I've done combat reacts, and I know the normally they don't do super well. But you know what? I'm totally cool with that, because I need to normalize that anyways, because I got bro, I had a haul. I got like 3 cold steel spearheads in, the trainers, right? I got those in. I got 4 polypropylene K-bar trainers in. I got 2 taser knives in. I'm on this arc of, at some point I'm going to be able to combat again. I'm going to enjoy it, because I very much enjoy it as a form of exercise. The problem is consistency and finding other people. However, that being said, thank you, Skallagrim, for another amazing video. Hope everything is going well for you. Really appreciated this. Love seeing a Halloween update, even if it was after when the month actually ended. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed, and maybe even learned something new. And I will see you in the next one.